Have you ever been reading a celebrity pastor's blog posts or listening to a famous Bible teacher and something jumps out to you and you're just like, how am I the only person seeing this thing? Why isn't anyone talking about it? Well, you're not alone. Welcome to Underdog Theology. This podcast is about looking at what's happening in evangelicalism. I'm talking tweets, I'm talking books, blogs, videos, all of it, and judging it according to Scripture. Whether that's reacting to celebrity pastors, teasing about the latest ridiculous battle in the culture war, or just having a little bit of fun together, this show is for all the folks who feel like they're on the outside looking in, who feel like they don't have a voice, who feel like they're an underdog. Welcome to Underdog Theology. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Underdog Theology. And if you're like, what the heck is going on? I asked in the chat, what's your number one hobby? And I made a joke about the chat overlay and how moving it around is my number one hobby, mostly because Geekcam keeps on changing stuff up. But that's the program I use. You guys don't care. But I was like, actually, I think it's just sitting somewhere and talking to a camera is my hobby. And I've noticed lately that I like sitting in different places. You guys have seen that over the years with my sets. If you've been paying attention to the channel, I don't know. I don't want to take anything for granted. This might be your first episode, but I changed my setup a lot. But I was like, you know what? I've never streamed from my bedroom. So here we are. And I feel like it's actually an appropriate time to be hanging out in my bedroom because it's just a little bit more feminine, It's just we're just hanging out. We're going to be relatable today. I feel like it's a good time to do that because we're talking about woman stuff. So what better place? I mean, I guess I could have streamed from the kitchen, but I don't have my other thing in here for sound effects, but I'm kidding. But I thought it'd be fun to just do it in the bedroom. Plus, I've got kiddos home today. They were home all last week. It was, an actual week off of school. And then this weekend was maybe one of the toughest diabetes weekends ever. So prayers up for us. I feel like we've turned a real corner. I blame mostly Dexcom, these little readers. Man, they really messed us up this weekend. Made me think a lot of different things were going on, and it might not have been going on, but it was happening at weird times where I don't want to test the kid. It's been one of those weekends where I haven't gotten much sleep, so who knows what we're going to be doing today? Except for I do know. I have some clips I want to watch, some stuff I want to watch about Allie, Beth Stuckey, about Joel Webbon. And hey, you know what, guys? I realize I kind of paint a dramatic picture. My kids are fine. As far as the diabetes stuff, it's more about just frustration at what I have to do to keep them level. And, that means staying up real late. So it's been a lot of 2 a.m., staying up till then and figuring out what's going on, giving them the right amount of insulin, stuff like that. So it's just frustrating, but everyone's safe. Everyone is healthy. It's just, me being stressed out. But apparently that's my life. Here we go. Let's talk about some stuff. All right. Once again, I didn't want to do a stream fully about the Patriarchy Hannah stuff. Kind of referenced it on the last little chill stream thingy. But if you don't know anything about that, because maybe you're a normal person, who doesn't spend all their time online and doesn't go on X. And I'm really trying to just get over all of my hangups with Twitter and just call it X. But every time I have to reference it, I don't know what that says about me, but that's what I have to do. But maybe you're a normal person. You just don't spend any of your time there. Well, there was a lady who had a prominent platform, and it was all about patriarchy. It was all about that trad wife lifestyle, which even as I say that, I almost want to vomit. Trad. Blech. Traditional. Can we just say traditional? But trad wife thing. And so she's tweeting all this stuff about her husband and their kids that they adopted and all this kind of stuff. And people like it. There's a whole audience over there, especially on X, where, they eat that stuff up. So they did. And so she got a bigger and bigger platform as she was talking about these things. And, some women were like really investing in her and giving like her sensitive information and like getting counsel from this supposedly like woman who had like nailed the idea of being a traditional wife, like just she has everything lined up and they wanted to be at that level like her, except for she didn't have any kids and she wasn't married and everything was a lie. Or at least the vast majority of it apparently was a lie. So there was like this deep dive that was done. And yeah, she didn't look anything like her picture. Actually, that person was someone she knew in like high school or something like that. And she just took that and ran with it. And it's like a whole big mess, just a mess of lies, a big spider web thing. And, like whatever, people lie on the internet all the time and getting kind of used to that. But, some people platformed her or at least tried to use her platform. People like Joel Webbon, people like Eric Kahn, people like, all these people over on like the patriarchy, right wing, ultra crazy do wackadoo list of just the most weird people you've ever imagined. They see someone who's taking off and they try to use that. So she had a podcast and she had Joel Webbon and Eric Kahn on the podcast. And a lot of people have been like, okay, don't they bear some responsibility in this thing? Because like they go on the podcast and especially with Joel Webbon, they're talking about how women are more gullible and so they should not be given like positions of authority. Like they're talking about patriarchy and how it's a great thing because men are so much smarter. All the while, he's talking to a woman who's faking everything online and he's obviously like bought it all up. And it's just, wow, that's a lot, right? Like there's so much irony there, like so much to unpack, and a lot of people have already. We're talking about this like a little bit later, like about a week later. I don't know. Like with this kind of stuff, I just don't care enough. Like about if it's just that, I don't really care enough. But now I kind of care a little bit because now Allie Beth Stuckey, some of you guys pointed this out to me in my last stream, like go and check it out. And so I did. And so I think Allie Beth Stuckey is like on the warpath with Right Response Ministries and that whole branch of, like what we've been talking about over the last few years. Like we've pretty much narrowed down on like that ultra right wing patriarchy group of Brian Sauvé and Eric Kahn and Joel Webbon. And I think that she's going to end them. like you have someone who's pretty powerful. Allie Beth Stuckey, like you might not like her. You might not ever want to hear her voice. I don't know. Like you might just like be all just completely against her. But you can't really argue with the fact that she has a huge platform and she's got a new book and it's about toxic empathy and it's fitting right alongside, like it's basically Joel Rigney for girls, or Joe Rigney for girls. That's essentially what I get out of it. I don't know, I probably won't read the book, but I'm not a big fan. I've thought she's interesting. I think she has some interesting points to make, but she's pretty problematic. And there's some things I want to talk about as we go through some of this stuff, but I think she's out to now make a point about how foolish these patriarchy guys are. So we're going to watch the clip in just a minute and, we'll dive into, we're going to take a look at what Right Response Ministry said about it and some interesting stuff, man. Some insights to like everything is not okay over there in the whole Right Response Ministries, area of the internet. Like there's fracturing that is going on, and it's interesting to kind of point out. So we'll take a look at a few things there, but I want to say hi to some people. I know some of you guys get mad at me. I got another comment this weekend of like, I like the content. I like the the topics, whatever. But you got to stop talking. 10 minutes of banter. Again, I don't want to just be a robot. Like, I want to hang out with people. That's what I think. Like, I'm in my bedroom, okay? We traveled outside of the basement. We're just hanging out in my bedroom, and we're just hanging out and talking, okay? So if you want like a list of things, go to AI. It probably will get the same stuff. Carol Ann says, my hobbies are fashion and chocolate. All right. I can get behind some of that. Like, the chocolate is pretty good. Where's your studio? It disappeared. I went downstairs and it's just gone. No, I just wanted to be up here. I don't know. It's also cold down there. So, I gotta do some stuff down there. So, like, I haven't insulated it any more than it was because we're gonna just rip it completely apart eventually here, and so it's very cold down there. So I didn't really want to do that today. Number one hobby, getting crafty with it. Oh, okay, crafts. My mom was big into crafts. I have never been. I'm not good with that kind of stuff. Like, I can't do it. I kind of wish I could. Like, I do a lot of the interior design in our house, even though it sounds super snobby. It's not like, it's just like I paint and pick out what decorations are going to be up, what lighting fixtures, stuff like that. Because I'm a patriarch and I have to have it my way. And my wife doesn't care about this kind of stuff. She's a utilitarian, just being like, whatever is useful. And I'm like, I want it to look pretty. You might say you're a relator, bro. Oh, I like that, Mark. Nice. Maybe. Let's go, ladies. It's our time. Let's go. Oh no, Dean is the undead. He's gray. Yeah, the lighting isn't super great, but here's the deal. I didn't want to bring my video light up here because there's something weird about that. I don't know. Putting a camera over there, okay. But like getting like the whole apparatus, I feel weird enough that I brought up my microphone. But I noticed how much the other microphone was cutting last one. So I was like, all right, we're going to have the real microphone. Andor season 2 trailer just dropped. Oh, did you think I hadn't seen that yet? Come on, Branson, get serious. Skeleton Remains. Hey, everyone. What's up, dude? Pam Stories. What's up, Pam? Mrs. Creole saying hi to Pam, not to me. Okay. I always just like making that. I hope you understand that it's low-hanging fruit. So I go for the easiest joke. Hey, weird question, but does anyone know what Dean's issue with the Ortland brothers, outside of Dane, of course? My experience of Gavin and Eric has been very positive. I have no issues with the other Gavins, the other Ortlands. Like, I've actually, I've made some videos where I've highly recommended Gavin's books. It's just the YouTube channel is like, not for me, like, but just, again, that's just like apologetic stuff. I'm not super interested in that as far as like entertainment, so I don't really watch it. But I don't really have any big issues. I think he could have gone quite a bit harder on Cameron Bertuzzi with that video a couple weeks ago. But their dad is like literally my favorite. So, yeah. But with Dane, it's the leadership stuff, and you wrote a book called Gentle and Lowly, and it didn't seem like he was living that out, at least according to some of those reports. So, not a huge fan of that. But the other guys, sure. Yeah, especially they're Baptists, so automatically I'm like, okay, I can jive with that. If Stuckey doesn't end Webbon, we should get Kendrick Lamar to start a beef with Joel. Oh man, Kendrick Lamar would be like, "Who? What? No." Isn't that guy a rapper? Hi, interested to hear this one. Sweet Leanna, welcome to the stream. Ryan Duff, who exposed the situation, is super cool. I agree. Allie's first book is terrific. Haven't read it. She blocked me on Twitter. Like, I feel like that's probably where we're going to go with this. Like, I understand there are going to be a lot of people who either really love Allie Beth Stuckey or they really don't like her. I'm pretty much in the middle. Like, I'm with a lot of these people. Like, I mean, like, we talk about some of this stuff, but I mean, I grew up in Fundy world. I understand that there are going to be people who are going to have different opinions than me and be way more conservative, and I could still get along with them. Like a lot of those people actually still hold on to the gospel quite a bit, even though they make some terrible decisions with some other stuff. And so I can hang out with those people. I can get along with those people. I could take the good and like not even just spit out the bones. I could chuck those bones. Like I could chuck them. How coach would have put me in fourth quarter. We'd be state champs, no doubt in my mind. How much you want to bet I could throw a football over the mountains? That's me and those bones. But like, so I could get along with them. And I think with her, I pretty much know where someone like that is going to end up on a lot of issues. So I could listen to it like for the things I'm interested in and just be like, okay, this is the kind of stuff they're not going to be right about, and just kind of move on from it. Eliza likes her. I know Allie Beth Stuckey was very offended when I compared her new book, Toxic Empathy, with Joe Rigney and Doug Wilson's The Sin of Empathy. She replied to me on IG and was very defensive about that. I will say she does seem like a very defensive person, for as like what we'll take a look at and some of the things she says. She is online a lot more than she leads on, because I've known people that have interacted with her, and it's just, yeah. Uh, she seems like she's looking for things about herself. And I don't mean to be like, I see that stuff too about me, even though like I imagine it's like 1% of like the same of the amount of stuff that she sees about herself. But whatever. This is taking too long, says Steve. Stop talking. Uh, he didn't say that, but that's what he meant. Dean, banter is one of the things that sets your show apart. Yeah, it is, but maybe not for the best. But honestly, I don't care. So, like, I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do this if I didn't get to just hang out. Like, that's the kind of my whole thing, is just to hang out and talk about these things. So, if you want like the precise thing, then there are other channels. Actually, maybe not. Like, at least with the opinions that you'll get here, we're kind of in the minority, and that's okay. What's up, Johnny Appleseed? Hope you're doing well, man. And One Girl Army is here. Forget Kendrick. How about Lecrae? What would that would be an epic to watch. Would it? I feel like it would be like Lecrae doing a show, and then they would just go to Joel Webbon sitting in the chair and doing the exact same spiel that he's done 1,000 times, and then bringing up like that Squirrely Joe's coffee, like, or whatever. Like, there's some beef thing too that sponsors him. It'll be just that. I just want a Hamilton style rap battle instead of the regular press conferences we've been getting. Yeah. Well, you want creativity, and then you're coming to Christian YouTube for that? What? That's okay, Crusader. I love you as well. I love you, random citizen. Anybody who's not here for the banter, what is wrong with you? At this point, they either stumbled across this channel like last week with like one video, and then they're like, why is this guy just keep on talking to the chat? Why does he do that? Aren't you just supposed to say drop your location and move on? Shots fired. Okay. Can't stand Stuckey or Webbon. Both are just grifters. All right. Well, that's your opinion. Mrs. Creole says, I think Allie's book will be emphasizing the toxic things you did mention in the Rigney video. She's probably calling stuff out like affirming gender transitions, etc. Maybe I should get that book. There are 3 books I need to order then. I need to order Jared C. Wilson's Lest We Drift. I need to order Aaron Armstrong's new book. And maybe I need to order this one too. But we'll see. I'm with you, Dean. As far as being middle neutral about most people, including Allie, I try to find what I can appreciate about lots of people and leave it at that. Yeah, I'm probably go a little further. Like that. Like, I'll say what I really disagree with them about, and like, I'll just be like, I don't pay attention to that person because they said this. But like sometimes something will be interesting. So I'll take a look at it. What's up, Secundum? After Allie Beth Stuckey lied about Gavin Ortland, I wouldn't really consider her as a reliable source, whether I agree with her or not. Yeah, there's a bunch of drama there. And Pam says Allie Beth blocked me on Twitter at some point, and I cannot for the life of me understand why. I mean, I'm very sweet and kind. No, but really, I have no idea how she saw any of my tweets. That's what I'm saying. I think she probably pays attention to a lot more than just like, just like random big things that come across. I think she's on Twitter probably a lot more than she would lead on, or at least someone on her team is, and like just blocks people. I haven't been blocked, but today that ends. All right, let's take a look at this video here. All right, we'll start off with this today. Even though we are 23 minutes into the stream, 89 people watching. They made it through all the banter. Congratulations to the few, the proud, the banter appreciators. 91, 17 people who have liked it, and one dislike. One dislike. What did I say? Oh, it was the banter. It was focusing on the banter, and they're just like, how dare you? All right. They changed it. Someone hit the wrong button. That's fine. It's fine. We'll move on. All right. So let's take a look at this video. This is all about that patriarchy Hannah stuff, and a lot of it I just do not care about. I'm not interested in the slightest. Like, again, like everyone's talking about that, but there are so many people who who you have seen at different conferences who live the same lifestyle, and maybe some are found out, maybe some never will, but they're complete fakes. Like, and I don't mean to like start a witch hunt of who and blah blah blah, but I'm just saying like that happens all the time. But everyone's now concerned about this, and maybe it's because it's so scary, because there's like almost like no way to know. Like, I try to show Heather every once in a while, just for proof of life. Like just be like, I am who I say I am. My wife likes me, but like but with people online, especially with like these accounts that don't have their faces on it, and even some that do, you have no idea whether that's true or not, and that's kind of terrifying. Like if at least as far as investing in someone. So I think that maybe is why like people are really talking about this guy or this whole situation. But let's take a look at what Allie Beth says.
Cast patriarchy country. I truly think that this is like intentional. I think that she's trolling these people. I mean, it's just so silly. And I'm just like curious, did these men check with Hannah's husband before going on her podcast? Because these men have criticized me for having a platform. Now, it's interesting because a lot of these men, like, people like Joel Webbon, who have told me, I shouldn't be on the front lines of the culture wars. There's so many things with that. First of all, he has promoted Candace Owens' show, who is also a working mother. And also, a few years ago, Joel Webbon really, really wanted to be on my show, was asking and asking and asking to be on my show. I did not want to do it. Didn't know who he was. I gave him a 10-minute interview. It was fine. And whatever. And I think we probably...
Does she even go here? Like, that's the vibe I'm getting. Just like, like all this stuff. These guys went on this podcast and they're criticizing me. And to be fair, I haven't listened to that podcast except for like a little clip I saw on X going around. But obviously it upset her. And I don't know whether it was specifically about her or not or whatever, but I have seen Joel Webbon basically talk about her. And I think we've even brought it up on a couple shows. But it's, you can see that he is definitely referencing her, the way he describes this type of person that he's describing, like this woman who has sway over these people. And you'll even see it when we go to Joel and what he had to say about all this stuff. And Eric Kahn, he was on his show too. And it's just, yeah, it's a lot. But obviously it upset her, but obviously she's just like, well, you're small potatoes compared to me, and I can end you. We could end you today. And honestly, I think she might have.
Agreed on a lot of things, but I haven't changed since then. Like, I'm the same person with the same platform saying the same things. And now apparently I am some like secret girl boss feminist. Eric Kahn has made the same kind of comments, but both of these men went on Patriarchy, Hannah's podcast. Again, I don't know. It's unclear if they asked if it was okay with her husband. I'm not sure. She said on the episode with Eric Kahn, she wasn't sure if women should vote. Yeah, a lot of people say that. Eric Kahn also talked about, interestingly, how his wife works, which is fascinating because I've been criticized for having a podcast that is outside of the home. Kahn also said that women should not be.
Does it help that it kind of looks like a home? Maybe.
Arguing with men on Twitter using insults like heretic without addressing the issues through proper channels like their husbands and their church. Okay, what's funny is that I have never argued with any of these people on Twitter, but he and other men like him have repeatedly tried to goad me into a debate for attention. They've picked fights with me, with other women, even though I've never given them the time of day. And so they are extremely catty. They pick lots of fights. They get into lots of little arguments. And at the same time, they will be like, no, we're on the front lines fighting the culture war. And women shouldn't be on here. Bro, it's a podcast, okay? It's a podcast. And one thing that women are really good at doing is talking. Hannah added, I would like not have a phone if my husband saw me on Twitter saying these things. I don't know. I'm not even saying they're specifically talking about me. I don't think I've gone around and like called them or anyone a heretic. That's just not typically a word that I use. But the irony here is that Hannah was insanely aggressive, or Jennifer, and rude online, way more than I've ever been. Like, these people are simultaneously more aggressive and cattier than I've ever been online. And they spend way more time online than I do. Way more time. These men.
Yeah. Like, again, I think there's something there. Obviously, she's upset. And it doesn't matter if it was a woman or a man. If they were talking in the same tone, you'd be able to tell. Like, some of this is personally offensive for her. And, and she has a right to be offended, because you have a guy going on a platform that, like, of X, and basically publicly attacking you. And, I will take a look at the Joel Webbon thing. I think he references that it's not an attack to disagree with somebody. 100%. Like, here on this channel, we disagree with people. We don't say, you don't have a right to talk. Like, if you're saying you shouldn't have a microphone at all, like, or have access to the internet, your husband should be gatekeeping everything you say. Like, that's an attack for someone whose whole career is based off the idea of being able to speak into a microphone, even if you don't like her voice. Like, and if it's a guy's voice, there are some guys out there, what are you talking about? Some of the guys on Joel Webbon's show, I just, like, every time they talk, skip. Like, you just got to skip that stuff. The fast forward button is there for a reason. But that is a, like, very personal attack. And it's ironic because Joel Webbon has not only tried, this is the thing that I go like, wait, what, with Allie here? Or Allie Beth, I don't know. Does she use Stuckey? We'll call her Stuckey. But, like, my one big issue with this is mostly to the fact that she keeps on saying stuff like, he wanted so badly to be on my show, and, constantly kept on asking to come on the show, which, all right, you don't do that. Like, that's not how you get on someone's show. Like, that is like, I don't know if you like, I've been around on, like, creative circles with YouTubers and blah, 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 those kind of things. And, like, you're supposed to be talking about the content that you're making, but there's just always that one guy that just drops the link for like, they never interact with anything. But they just drop the link for all of their stuff every single time they do it. And like everyone's just annoyed with that. That's what Joel Webbon did with her. Like just being like, oh, just put me on the show, put me on the show. And just like, I don't want you on the show. I don't even know who you are. But is that accurate? No, because Allie Beth Stuckey did have him on the show. Like, I don't know if she's trying to say like how she felt about it before she had him on the show. But eventually she did have him on the show because he paid for it. Like he paid thousands of dollars apparently. Like, I don't know. I don't have like the firm number in front of me. Like this might be, I'm talking out of pocket on this part here. I think it was like 10 grand. Like that was out there. We talked about that on a show. But he paid like something like that, some crazy amount to be able to be on Allie Beth Stuckey's show. That wasn't that long ago. Like that wasn't that long ago. And then he goes and says, oh yeah, the lady that I was so desperate to be on this show that I paid thousands of dollars to be on that show. She shouldn't have a show. Like, because she's a girl. What? Like, that is such a drastic change. And this is what I've tried to document over the last couple of years, is to just show the progress or the digression, I guess you could say, of where Joel Webbon has gone and like how far this goes. And honestly, where I think some of the things about patriarchy inevitably leads, if you continue down that path, there's a certain place you could be a patriarchy person and stop at a certain place, just like any other, ideology. But I think that if you look down the way, you'll see Joel Webbon ain't that far removed. He's still on that same path. He's just way down there. But I think that it shows what Allie Beth Stuckey thinks of him, how highly she views his opinion. And honestly, this is one of those moments where I'm very thankful. You could judge motivations of why she would go this far and calling him out, and like, because it wasn't really a requirement of this thing, like this story about patriarchy Hannah. It's kind of like just like a little side note to say, oh yeah, Joel Webbon and Eric Kahn were on the show. But I appreciate her going this far because she has such a huge audience of women. And I think the patriarchy guys, and I'm referencing like this branch, this Right Response Ministries branch of that ideology. They're so scared of her because they understand that, you push women down for too long, as these guys have, like saying, we'll take a look at it. I keep on referencing the video we're about to watch. But like you keep on saying, oh, you can't have a public voice. You can't even get a job. All these things, you're saying you have to be quiet and just take it. Well, those women, they might be quiet, but they still know how to use the internet. I don't know if these guys know that, maybe. Like they could still Google some stuff and they're going to find Allie Beth Stuckey, and her audience is still going to be huge. And here she is drawing a line in the sand saying, this guy, Joel Webbon, is bad news. You shouldn't listen to him. And those wives of those patriarchy guys are going to watch this. They're going to soak that in. They're going to start asking questions. And then all of a sudden, this little house of sand is going to fall frickin' apart. Like, it's just going to get washed away because you have to win over, and any ideology, you have to win over the entire family. All right. You can't just be like, hey, bros, you guys want to go with me? That's great for single men. But you start getting married people, and whatever you win them with, you got to then convince all of them of that. All right. Hopefully it's the gospel. But in this world, you got to convince all of them about patriarchy. And if you don't, eventually that's going to cause division, because you're going to have the husband saying, oh, you can't do that. You can do that. And they're going to be like, actually, and they're going to reference maybe something Allie Beth Stuckey says, or maybe some thing that she points them to, or that some other source that they find online. And they're going to then ask those questions. And the thing about patriarchy is that it's a weak system. Like it's about being boisterous about strength, and like being like, yeah, we're all about this. We're a very strong group. But as soon as you start poking holes, like credibility, like who is actually credible to make those decisions. And you start being like, oh, apart from anatomy, like, why do you guy get to like make the decisions about something you know nothing about? Like maybe the wife knows something more about this, but the husband is like, based off the fact that, like I won't go that far, but like based off the fact that I'm a man and because of my anatomy, I get to make that decision. It's a pretty weak system. And it's not what I believe Scripture says. So this is going to be very problematic for Joel Webbon, and you're going to see him reference it even. Let's finish this part up, though.
Interact with her and other women do so for no other reason that I can see than to like boost their own egos. Colin also referred to me in the same sentence as Julie Roys, claiming that they see themselves, that we see that ourselves as the watchdogs of the church, which is just so funny that I would be included in the same sentence as Julie Roys, who literally hates me. Okay, let me pause and tell you about our next sponsor for the day, and that is Lumen. So
not to be confused with, Severance or anything. That's something different. But we'll go a little bit after that part.
Okay, is about. That's what Toxic Empathy is about. That's really what both of my books are about in different ways. How women, because we are in a very, very good way, more emotional and more compassionate and see things through a more relational lens. That is our strength, but it can also be our weakness. And so I don't even necessarily disagree with that. It is ironic that you were being interviewed by someone who is not real while you are talking about women being more easily deceived. And like, why were you on this woman's podcast? Only because she was like the cheerleader for all of these men on X. Joel said, okay, so in response to all of this, a woman lied. Therefore, feminism is true. Did I do this right? He's sarcastically saying that all of the people like making these claims about the fakeness of trad patriarchy culture, that they're getting it all wrong. But that's a straw man. No one is saying that. I mean, maybe some people are saying that. I'm certainly not saying that. I'm not even arguing that because this person was fake, that all trad influencers are fake. I'm not saying anything against like farming or making sour.
Yeah, because that would be stupid. Like this, that's what people like Joel Webbon who can't actually discuss these things. Like that's what they try to do. Distract you with nonsense. Because no one would say that because that's the stupidest thing ever. No one looks at what happened with Steve Lawson and says, everything in evangelicalism is false. You could say that's a problem and it has repercussions and maybe there are some other things that need to change. But you don't have to throw out all of evangelicalism because a popular guy did a bad thing. You do that with anything. You go to a movie theater. And because I like movies, even though you can't see any behind me, but you can see some on my computer. But you go to a movie theater and the seats are ratty and like the popcorn is stale and the screen has a tear in it. Like you don't go automatically. Every movie theater is like that, right? Because we're rational human beings, because we can know that there can be something bad that is only a part of something that could be good. Now, I think that there are many more dangers compared to like one movie theater versus, the entire industry versus like Patriarchy Hannah and the entirety of that whole world. Like, I think that there's probably a lot more issues with that like, especially when you got anonymous accounts doing stuff like, you just know it. Guys, come on. Like, we know how it is with gamers, right? Like the gamers that are out there. How many jokes have you seen in different movies, TV, whatever, where the gamer is like saying that they're this person, but they're a completely different person? That's going to happen way more often with anonymous accounts than it would with someone with real pictures, something you could search, right? So like, I think it's probably a bigger percentage of issues there, but we're rational human beings. And for him to go like, oh, because one person was wrong, it means feminine. Like, no, what he's trying to do is say like, Obviously, this obvious thing that we can all agree on is like, yeah, he's just pointing that out. He's not able to have the actual conversation.
Brad, of certainly not anything wrong with being a stay-at-home mom and all of those wonderful things. I freaking love being a wife and mom, and I am home so much the majority of the time. And I love all of those things. It's not to discount the truly biblical life. It's to say that so much of this so-called trad world, it's fake. It's an aesthetic. And a lot of these people are using it for a platform. They're using it for fame. They're using it for money. And it doesn't actually reflect how they live their lives. Now, maybe some of it is really genuine and really sincere, but I guarantee you, Hannah Patriarchy is not the only one that is a total fraud. It might not be identity theft by all of these trad influencers, but it very often is true that their online life does not at all reflect how they really live. Pastor Tom Buck pointed out that Webbon did not platform Hannah on his show, but he allowed Hannah to platform him. Buck added that this was similar to how he was on Relatable, but then tried to distance himself later as it became quote unquote problematic. And so that's the deal. That's what happened with Hannah Patriarchy. And some people have some really good commentary out there, like my friend Samuel Say.
All right. Well, she's winding down there. But I think that's huge. And that's going to be such like a real, like a hole being, punctured into a boat. And that boat will eventually sink because you have him or you have Allie Beth basically saying there's some real issues with both Joel Webbon and Eric Kahn. They're not, who they say they are. They've changed drastically over like a very short amount of time. They're not trustworthy, and they're not promoting the same things that, she is. Like, it sounds like the way that she describes, women being the emotional ones and not men, because that's how it works. I saw, what did Brandon say? Brandon said something. Allie's right. I feel nothing. Yes. Come on. You get any man in a room and watch Old Yeller. You'll find out how emotional they are. No, I'm just kidding. But we do have emotions. We're emotional people because that's what it means to be made in the image of God. That's on everybody. That's not just women. And there's nothing in scripture that says that women are like the emotional ones or the empathetic ones, according to Joe Rigney. There's nothing in scripture about that kind of stuff. People just say it and it becomes true because enough people said it, I guess. And that's how truth works, I guess. But like she's basically fitting into like the patriarchy landscape here. And I think that's even more dangerous than someone like me being like, oh, Joel Webbon's wrong. And like, you could see it maybe in my stuff, but that's very different than an insider saying, and someone with her level of platform saying Joel Webbon is wrong. I could say Joel Webbon is wrong, and patriarchy, I don't even like patriarchists. They could come across the channel and be like, "Man, the guy's weird." He's constantly talking about movies, and most of the time he has his hat on backwards. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Move on. But you can go to Allie Beth Stuckey and see the prominence of her platform, and also the fact that she's an insider in this world, and she actually believes those things, and be like, "Oh, well, if she's going to say that Joel Webbon is, problematic, then maybe he is." And they're going to start asking some really difficult questions. So this is like an all hands on deck emergency for Right Response Ministries, like for Joel Webbon, for Eric Kahn, for Brian Sauvé, for the whole trash world, multiverse of weird YouTube channels and X accounts. They are going to be really hit hard by this because there's going to be a lot of women who are asking some difficult questions, and apparently they already have. So let's take a look at how the men sitting in chairs this is one of the things I go like, patriarchy can't be true. All right. Because you got these three guys sitting in a chair and they're all supposed to be patriarchs, but only one guy talks. He's the I don't know, the ultra patriarch. Okay, but there's so many jokes pop into my head. Like every time I see this set, there's like 1,000 different jokes I want to make and and things I want to say about it. But we're gonna move on. We're just gonna watch it.
Who that is, and she's saying my pastor is silly and stupid, and more importantly than that,
He's referencing the things that Patriarchy Hannah has said to him, and like online.
theologically and biblically unfaithful and wrong. Maybe I should be concerned, So that created, and that was the first occurrence. So let the record straight. Let the record be clear and be straight. We were teaching guys like me, guys like Eric, guys like Brian. We were teaching the principles of biblical patriarchy, including not just that you should have, not just complementarianism, that you, as long as you have, male elders and only men preach on the Lord's Day, then women can do everything else, including being, they don't have the title, they're not ordained, but they actually can be the shadow elders who actually tell their husbands what to do and really run the church. And they can also preach in all these other contexts and blah, 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 blah.
I think even that is showing where his mind is. This idea of women being shadow elders at churches. Like in that, like the men love their wives and listen to them. That doesn't mean they make the decisions. Like it might impact how, like, even in a secular world, a man has a job, he goes home to his wife says something about how someone was treating him at work. That might impact him because he values his wife's opinion, but that doesn't mean he has to do exactly what she says. But it's this weird blame game that he does right off the bat. And really what I think is going on here is you're seeing the difference between Mark Driscoll and Joel Webbon. Mark Driscoll was very much for the same things. And you see it now. He's kind of showing that a little bit more in his most recent stuff. But Mark Driscoll was able to win over the women. Joel Webbon doesn't have the charisma to do that. Like he is failing there. So instead of being able to win them over with this ideal of what this ideology could be, like how beautiful this relationship could be in this world of patriarchy, whatever, in the home, how it can look, instead of winning them over with the good, it's like, no, you don't want to be like those women who just, govern their husbands and become shadow elders and like all this weird stuff. And I think it's just pushing down. And eventually that's not going to work.
We're not complementarian. We are patriarchal. And so we've been teaching these principles of biblical patriarchy for, the last few years. And I don't know about you, Eric. Maybe your story's different. You can speak for yourself. But for me, I had not, and I know this, I had not named Allie Beth Stuckey once. Not once. As I was talking about what I see as a problem of women who are not elders, they're not preaching on the Lord's Day, but they're still doing a lot of polemical, theological warring in the public sphere.
What a foolish thing. Like, I didn't say her name, so that makes it okay. Like, I think even when all this was going down, it was in reference to something Allie Beth Stuckey said. Like, so it was specifically about her. And I think also, what's her face? The Daily Wire lady, Owens. I think it was also like, it was like those two and like the prominence that people have for those two. And then he goes and says what he said, basically that they shouldn't have any platform. And then he's like, but I didn't say her name. Like everyone knew what you were talking about. It's like when you reference something just kind of vaguely on the day that something big happened. Like basically, all right, let's say like the Steve Lawson stuff, when all that happened and you go on X and say like something about having an affair and what that can lead to. People are going to realize that you're probably referencing what Stephen Lawson was, right? Like it's that, but he's just trying to wiggle out of it.
Just in a nutshell, in general, I don't want to see women in the public sphere. You mean they shouldn't hold political office? Correct. You mean you don't want to see them podcasting? Correct. Well, but what about in the marketplace? With 9 to 5, careers. Nope, not that either.
There it is. There's the clip that everyone can use for him to say that women shouldn't work at all. Like that's what he said. All right, he doesn't want them in the, he's going to talk about military, blah blah blah. All right, but they shouldn't be politicians. They shouldn't be podcasters, and they shouldn't even have a job. How, I guess you got to grift real hard if you want to survive in 2025 on one paycheck and live the lifestyle that they say you should have of having 14 kids. You got to grift real hard. That's a big burden. Maybe that's why Webbon's acting so oddly the last year and a half. Maybe the burden's getting to him. But it's just, if you're gonna have 14 kids, you gotta figure something out here. But they shouldn't even have a job. Okay.
Don't want to see women holding positions in the public square. I don't. Not just I don't want to see women in combat positions in the military. That's finally, we've gotten there. We've finally gotten to the point as a culture where we can say, yeah, female people, females in the Secret Service might be a bad idea. I'm glad we've gotten there.
But the president almost died. And maybe not.
Now that the president has almost died because...
He said something. Yeah. Guys, he said something. Another guy said something. Okay.
Now we can say that. Yeah, so I'm glad we can say that. That's an improvement. Praise God. But I want to go way further than that. So we were talking about those kinds of things before, and I think that Allie must have heard something and it bothered her. But I had not named her. But then she, and again, to be clear and be honest, she did not name me, but she did verbatim read a transcript, not just 2 sentences, a whole portion of one of my sermons out of context, to where every single woman in my church knew that she was talking about me, and I had to address it. So when she says,
all right, last thing I'll do to make fun of people sitting there. Do you think that they consciously decide how to sit? Or is Joel just such an alpha male to them that they just fall in line and sit exactly like him? Is that, I don't know. That's just something I think about sometimes. But here it's pretty clear where he's going with this, right? He's basically trying to be everything I say that's messed up is taken out of context. Guys, you could take anything I've ever said, unless it's literally 10 seconds and I was making a joke or something. But you can take almost anything I've ever said and give it all right, let's go a full because the clips that go around of him are 7 minutes long. It's that's a lot of context. But let's say 2 minutes. You could take 2 minutes of anything I've ever said, and it won't be anywhere near as bad as what Joel Webbon says every single week, right? If you've got a sermon that has some of the garbage that has been spread across the internet from Joel Webbon, it's either the worst sermon you've ever preached, or you got a real problem and it's a continual problem. But I was taken out of context. Okay, said everybody.
Guys are catty and they want to pick fights. I just think it helps to remember the details of what actually happened. Eric, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think in particular, I want to give credit here. I think it was Jeff Wright and Ben DeWary who I first heard this from. But one of the problems, I think, when you put a woman in the polemical role, culture warring, something she's not designed to do, generally her fight mode is mama bear. And you...
This dude, I mean, even more than Joel Webbon, this guy is just frustrating. Because it's just all right, first off, their lighting guy wasn't around. I've seen that background look way better than what it currently looks like. Does the guy not know how to use a light? The technology is sitting there. That's a podcast area for them. And I doubt anything else around it looks good. It's probably just that one wall. But anyways, this whole thing of like, oh, women shouldn't be out there. They aren't designed for this. Well, one thing I can say is neither are you. You're not doing a great job. So might as well have someone else try. But it's just like, why can you even, like, how do you even say that? Like, oh, women aren't designed for this polemical war. Like, well, first, like, why do we have to have a polemical war? Like, how about we just preach the gospel? But they don't know how to do that. Okay, my kids are gonna get concerned. Daddy's yelling about the gospel again. But it's just foolishness and them just trying to talk themselves up by pushing women down. Where was it? Who said it? Somebody made a really good point when I was referencing like the Mark Driscoll, Joel Webbon comparison and how they're like why Joel Webbon fails where Mark succeeded. I think it was Eliza, but I can't find it right now. But I think it was her. She said something about how Mark like yelled at the men and that Joel Webbon and all those guys, they basically just push women down. Like it's difference of being like responsibility and like I think he went way too far with it. But responsibility, men, and here these guys are like it's the women that are the problem, and that kind of shows you the difference between these two.
I see that sort of thing happening. I would also say in listening to the clip with Allie, what she had just said, I think there's quite a bit of continued reading of motive and intent in there. I keep hearing things like these guys are chasing clout and they're just jealous of my platform and I won't even respond to them. Here I am above it all. But that's actually going back to what you said about a year ago when this all kicked off. I remember her, citing from the sermon. Of course, we all kind of knew what she was talking about, going after it pretty directly, word for word. It quickly became a thing where people knew who it was about. But also what she was doing on our end, we were responding in general at the time, not specifically to her. And like she would do a screenshot of one of my posts, try to cut off like half of my face, but you could clearly, anybody who knows, it was still me. But her whole thing was like, well, I don't want to give these guys a bigger platform because they just want my platform, blah, blah, blah. I think all of that is, look, it's fundamental misunderstanding, again, about the personal nature of the agon of ideas. When we come into Twitter, Orrin McIntyre has said this, when we come into Twitter, it's like the Coliseum and now X. People come here for blood. It's a bit of a blood sport. Not saying we all have to play that game identically, but it's an exchange of ideas. So if you come out in the marketplace of ideas, you exchange an idea and then in bad faith try to dunk on people and then act like the victim. I mean, for a lot of people, that's probably not going to be a very good look. I also think it's, inherently dishonest. And to the personal, I guess the personal and the pastoral, the reason it became an issue for us is because we had people in the church who were in the process of, leaving because, it's generally a woman running her household. She's listening to Allie Beth Stuckey. She's wildly offended that we would ever disagree with anything that Allie Beth said. And then goes on listening to Allie Beth as the conflict goes on and felt the same way. It was like, I would say I was disagreeing with Allie Beth and she would say, you're attacking her. And that's a very feminine coded way to look at how conflicts work. Women are generally peacemakers. I do think it's funny. Maybe it's
So you saw it there. And somewhere along the way, Joel Webbon references it too. The reason why they're making this podcast about it is one, you got Allie Beth Stuckey, you could put her in the thumbnail, and no shame on that. I did it too. But like it's someone prominent. So that's going to help them in their algorithm and blah, blah, blah. But most importantly, they're losing people. You heard it. You heard him admit it. And somewhere in the episode, Joel does too. They are losing women, and here he blames the women, and it's a woman running the household. I don't know if you're leaving the church. It's probably not because the guy is like staunchly against it. Like he's probably on the fence. Like at the very if you want to be positive and be like, oh, we had him, it's just her that's the problem. It's, he probably didn't like you that much. But that's the reality for these guys. And that's why they're not going to win. That's why these guys will eventually fall apart. Because they had a moment, guys. They really did. Like after the election a couple months ago, they had a moment where they could have normalized themselves. You're seeing it with Doug Wilson. You're watching in real time Doug Wilson and Joe Rigney and all the Moscow guys. They're trying it. They're making this move. All right. They're trying to normalize themselves. That's why you don't see the same kind of like fire and aggression out of Moscow as it used to be. And they're trying to look more reasonable. And even things like calling these guys out, that's all happening so they can kind of normalize themselves and be like, no, we're about these things, but we're good, faithful Christians, or at least supposedly, especially if you don't listen to the Sons of Patriarchy, then you're good. Like they're fine. They're fine over there in Moscow. That's what they're trying to promote. And these guys could have done that. But instead, because I think they just lacked the insight, the wisdom, the knowledge necessary to make a good decision about it. Instead, they decided to niche down even harder. And it might have helped them like at the very beginning, but now it's hurt them so bad. These guys, it's a mortal wound. All right. These guys, like I said, like the hole in the boat has been placed there. They don't know where it is. They're trying to find it. They're trying to, keep this boat afloat, but it's not going to work because they went too hard with their anti-Semitism, which, like, obviously if you're anti-Semitic, like, that's way too hard. Like, but they weren't even like trying to be like clever about it or anything, like not trying to be like, well, it's really about this, and like trying to like rationalize it. They just went like, no, we're this. And so that was really stupid, really foolish. They did that. And then also the way that they're treating some of these women, and the way that they're just saying, oh, it's actually, they shouldn't even work. They shouldn't have podcasts. They shouldn't have a voice. And these women at home, they need to shut up and just listen to their husbands. And, how many pee breaks do they get? And, like all that kind of stuff. Like they could have gone down a route of trying to normalize themselves. And by doing so, maybe win over some people by being winsome, although they don't like that word still. But instead, they decided to not try to cover up anything. They actually got more aggressive, and they started basically saying like, hey, we are like the furthest right you can get. Come over to our side. And that works for the crazies, for the wackadoos. They're going to buy into that. But the rational people, no. And that's why these people are going to suffer. Like, as far as like their platform, it will shrink. Eventually, Joel Webbon's going to be forgotten. I know he said what he said about that's why my name won't be remembered. Like anyone over that, like most narcissistic sentence ever said in evangelicalism, or like a form of evangelicalism, I guess. But like my name will be remembered and yours will be forgotten. That's so stupid. And that's the kind of stuff you get out of this group. And so they've shot themselves in the foot. It's a mortal wound. It's like they're not even doing anything about it. Instead, they're having podcasts where they're actually promoting their wrongness to everybody. And it's not going to work. And I'm very thankful for it. So Allie, Beth Stuckey did a great job with this of calling him out. And you're seeing it. You're listening to it. There are people who are leaving their churches because they listened to Allie, Beth Stuckey. And now it's going to continue. Now, there was one more part I wanted to talk about. I think it was right after they talk about Squirrely Joes or whatever. No, there's something that they talk about with platform. I'm going to try to find it. I didn't take notes on it. We'll see if we can find it.
Yeah, I think particularly in the instance where somebody's coming out of New Age, coming into patriarchy at all. Yeah, my first thought is exactly what Michael said. You're talking about a bruised reed and a smoldering wick, and you're thinking about, okay, how can I? When you think about that, you see no flame, but there's smoke coming off of it, so there's got to be something going on here. But in that situation,
somewhere here.
Yeah, I think particularly in the instance where somebody's coming out of New Age, coming into patriarchy at all. You're at Shepherd's Conference, and you're there to see all your favorite preachers. And then maybe there's somebody outside your camp you look at, maybe like us, and you go, man, this is crazy. They host conferences and they want attention. I can't believe them. And then, it's like John MacArthur has his face on a Fresca can. And I'm like, actually, I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, it's kind of funny.
That's cool.
So I think a lot of it is that. And then I also think, too, when you look at these worlds, this is kind of related to Patriarchy, Hannah, which obviously Allie brings up. But when you look at something like that, in the G3 ShepCon world, Steve Lawson falls, and nobody says, man, I bet Reformed theology is just not even true.
Right.
Well, in the same way, it's
way further than that. So we were talking about those kinds of things before, and I think that Allie must have heard something and it bothered her, but I had not named her. But then she, and again, to be clear and be honest, she did not name me, but she did verbatim read.
But that's actually going back to what you said about a year ago when this all kicked off. I remember her, citing from the sermon. Of course, we all kind of knew what she was talking.
Where is it?
Theology is just not even true.
Right.
Well, in the same way, it's like you have somebody who does something that's dumb, says sorry, and we all admit, like, that was a really dumb. That's bad. Don't do that. Lying is bad. I think we can all agree on that one. But the same camp, and I'm not saying
not worth going through all this to try to find it, but there's somewhere where they're talking about platform chasing and how it's fine. Everyone's doing it. You have a YouTube channel. That's what you're trying to do. You have an X account. That's all you're trying to do is just build a platform. And that's not accurate. Like, there are lots of people who start an X account without any thought that I'm going to gain, 10,000 followers, or they start a YouTube channel and they have no, gumption to get like, one of those silver plaques or something. Those people exist. Those are meek people. And those are usually the kind of people that actually deserve that stuff. But, there's nothing wrong with ambition and trying to build a platform. Every week I put effort into this channel, not as much as I used to, and some of you guys have noticed. But you put effort into the channel trying to grow it. But there's a difference between being so consumed with that to the point where you are changing your beliefs, changing your message, you're changing everything that you were trying to do at the beginning. You're changing all that for the goal of getting that platform. And you're paying, like, I think if you're paying someone $10,000 to be on a podcast for 15 minutes, it probably shows like you're not in the right headspace to be trying to build a platform. Like, that's pretty crazy. Now, maybe a gamble that worked, but that is just like, I think it shows that you are just desperate to be famous, and you will change in order to be famous. And maybe you're not healthy enough, maybe you're not biblical enough to be able to actually build that platform on your own. And I think that's probably the failure for these guys. Like, it's not just that you can't build a platform. Anyone who's here in the chat who wants to start a YouTube channel, hit me up. I would love to give you at least what little insights I can growing this thing. As small as it is, I would love to help you. Like, I think that, trying to build a platform is fun and good, and it can be a great thing and a fun hobby too. But when you're so consumed with that you're just like, you're thinking about all the time, and you start losing sight of responsibilities, and you start losing, sight of your beliefs and your message and your theology, and you just leave it behind so that you can pursue this growth. Like, that's where you run into a ditch. And I think these guys did that a couple years ago. Like, they just got so consumed with the idea of growth. Again, when I first saw Right Response Ministries on YouTube, what was it, like 3.5, 4 years ago, they were at 15,000. And Joel was putting up sermons and stuff. And like he said, like, that's the goal. That's the thing I want to be known for, all that kind of stuff. And that quickly changed, right? Because he put up some stuff like 1.5 years ago about the Nephilim, and then he got a bunch of followers. Like, and he got probably money because of that. maybe enough money to get back on Allie Beth Stuckey's show. like that's that, and you can see it. He left behind what he was about. Now, that's not to say you can't change. I started doing different things, but I started talking about things that I was passionate about, that I actually believe, and that I have not changed on. I am the exact same as I was 4 years ago, because my theology hasn't changed. And you can change your theology, but you got to be upfront about that stuff and not try to be like, I've always been this way. I've always been this patriarch. No, you've changed drastically. And it's very convenient that your audience was like asking for that. Like the people that were growing your audience were like asking for that change. And all of a sudden you became that. I think this is one of those times where the audience impacts the person, and the audience dictates, what kind of content this person is going to be making. I think it's happened with these Ogden kids. I think it's happened with the Right Response Ministries guys. I think it's just that whole branch is rotten to the core because they chased after an audience that is legit crazy. and wants like the worst stuff. So that's what I think. And I think Allie Beth Stuckey is onto that and has been saying that for a little bit. And hopefully this last time is that nail in the coffin of being like, hey, women, ask your husbands your husband. This is Mormonism. ask your husband about these things. Why are they listening to this person? What does the Bible say about those things? And, to them, she's enemy number one because she's already in that world and she's calling them out. Very different than me here, calling this stuff out because I'm on the outside. When you're on the inside, you're able to actually confront these things and have a little bit more sway and credibility. So even if someone on the outside is saying the same thing, someone on the inside will make a way bigger impact. That, on top of the fact that she's one of the biggest podcasters out there in this world, like in this world of evangelicalism, I'm very excited that Allie Beth Stuckey's on the warpath. And I think she just basically ended Joel Webbon. It might not happen tomorrow, but I think you're going to see the ramifications from here on out. That platform is just going to weaken and weaken. And he might say crazier and crazier things to try to strengthen the core of that audience that he has, bailed on his theology to pursue, but that it's not going to end well there. Trash world. It's going to the garbage heap for sure. All right. Yeah, I said it. I went there. Was it a good joke? I don't know. But whatever. 146 people watching live, only 44 likes. So I'm assuming that the other 100 are full on patriarchy people. So at least hit the dislike, just hit one button. It could be any button. You can subscribe, you can hit like, you can hit dislike, hit any of the buttons, and that'll be good. Let me see. Okay. Got like 2 minutes and then I gotta go. Let's see. Wendy says 10,000 to be on a podcast sounds a bit Daystar-ish to me. Yeah, I mean, I could be a little bit wrong on the number, but it's thousands of dollars that he paid to be on that podcast. So, and then for him to be like, I don't think it's valuable. It's like the dumbest thing in the world. Like, what are you talking about? Obviously you like her. Or you've changed so much that maybe you shouldn't be listened to. Like, because even he was like, we're trying to teach these men about patriarchy. And it's like a bunch of like 32-year-olds. Like, even if patriarchy was like legit, like, wouldn't you want like the older guys who have experience to be the ones teaching? And they're just like a bunch of 32-year-olds being like, patriarchy's great. It's had such a great impact in my marriage. It's like, you've been about this for 4 years. How do you know? Like, it's not like test it a little bit. like no, before you go back to formula. Some people will get that. I spoke to a young girl online who left Christianity because of this patriarchal garbage. She thought it meant Jesus didn't love her as much as men. A lot of here's the deal. You want to know something interesting about patriarchy and about racism? Uh, like you can't be legit. You can't be reformed, I believe, and be full on, at least into this Right Response Ministries world of patriarchy. Those two things can't exist because you are saying that men are better. And if that's true, then we're not as equally depraved as you say you are. Right? And the same thing for racism. I remember asking this question, it made people very uncomfortable. But if you're racist, you are saying that there's something about me, the color of my skin, that makes me inherently better than someone else. You can't be reformed and think that, because we're supposed to believe that we're totally depraved, that we're as sinful as we could be. You can't be less sinful or better inherently because of something about you, whether it's your sexuality or your skin color, and still then be, all about total depravity. And it doesn't make sense. You can't have that. So these guys who say that they're reformed and they have something like that, one, automatically you could start, especially when it's racism, like you could start really questioning a lot of things. But you could definitely know that they're not reformed because you can't have it both ways. His whole business model in Right Response is being right, so he can't ever admit he was wrong. Yeah, but also he probably had a website. And that's how you do it. He had like Right Response Church, which is a terrible name, but that's Acts 29, man. Acts 29 with their church names. Come on, man. Like how many grace churches do we need? Like it's like they're like, we'll take Baptists out of it, that'll make a difference. Still, it's just Grace Church. Or the church at, and then like the name, and it's just like, that's going to be so confusing for everyone. The church at, Ashwood, whatever. It's just he's actually changing primary issues now. It's bad, right? I'm so glad my pastors barely post on social media. It's almost a red flag these days. Agreed. I think a lot of people just are quietly doing ministry, and regardless, like maybe they do fit into some of the paradigms of some of these people that we talked about, but they're just like, well, I have this belief. I'm not going to push it too hard, but I can somewhat respect that. It's the people who are like super loud online. They're like, everyone is wrong but me. No. Fear of women, maybe. But I neither like nor dislike. Make up your mind. Come on. Peppy Wiki. Hey, Dean, do you have any book recommendations for someone struggling with pietism? God is the author of evil and the determinism of Calvinism. The book that I always reference, but like, again, I've learned this about myself. I care more about the whys than the whats. And for me, like that was like the biggest thing in all of that. Like I can understand how people say Calvinism is something, but why is much harder. So for me, Greg Forster's The Joy of Calvinism would be the book that I would point people to. But that's not like a what. What is the... I can see the cover of it. Is it just Predestination? Like, what is it? I'm blanking. There's a white, black, and green book. I think it's just called Predestination, but I don't know. I'm blanking on who wrote it, but Greg Forster's The Joy of Calvinism is one of my favorites, so I'd point you to that. I don't fault Webbon for leaving Acts 29, but doing what he's doing now is beyond an overcorrection. It's straight up unbiblical. Sad he could have had such a great impact. I don't know, man. I think probably eventually he would have gone this way. Like you could see it back then. Like I again, the first time I talked about him, like about 3 years ago, I did a deep dive and looked at some of like the videos and like church, like I listened to some of his sermons to kind of get a feel for this guy. And he was trying to be a big shot in Acts 29. Guys, if you look at some of these guys and like why they become what they eventually become, it's usually because they have something within them that they were always going to do. Like they were going to err some way. It's just that they ended up erring over here. And like you could see it. That guy was always trying to do something. And I will say, like you could see it even with people like me. I've always tried to do stuff online, right? Like I've always tried to do stuff online. Eventually, I would have some hobby, whether it was theology, whether it would be comic books, whether it would be movies, whether it would be something else, technology maybe. These are all interests of mine, and I like the internet and I like being able to interact with people. So eventually, I was going to do something online, and here we are. So I think that's just like how people are. But you could see it. Like he was trying to be a big shot in Acts 29, and he was all about it, and he was trying to, get on the conference speaking route, and then he made his own, ramp up the stage, and it was all about this stuff. So eventually, he would have gotten to something like it, I think. I could be wrong. I'm not God. I'm just guessing. That could be a shirt. I'm not God. I'm just guessing. Johnny Appleseed. I am an MD. That would be coined by the Latin would mean fear of women. Okay. Calvinist gang. Is it a gang? Do we have chains? Our chains have been set free. Okay, that was dumb. Webbon does not exhibit any love of Christ. He exudes hate. Yeah, he does. There was a point where I would have been like, let's not go too far. But I mean, like, that's what he does. Like, again, you could hear it in his sermons. Not that I go and listen to his sermons, but I have listened to a couple because, trying to get the context for some of those clips that have gone out in the past. And it's like, wow. But then you have like people like Honest Youth Pastor listening to a sermon like that. And they pick one sermon and they're like, oh, that was pretty decent. And just say it's pretty decent. Or with Brian Sauvé, he just did that with him. And it's just like, you can't just take one sermon. You got to go and listen to a few. But, I guess those are the people to listen to. Right Response reminds me of the Mormon program and slogan, choose the right. I can see that. I have Humble Calvinist yet to read it through. Yeah, this Metters, right? That's the J. Metters one. Webbon sets off. What? Let's not go that far. All right, we can look at foolishness and all of that, but like, come on. Eliza B, I've been wanting that. Okay, yeah, I think it's the Metters one, right? I don't know. This rampant misogynistic doctrine is why I've stayed here for 3 years, Dean. Thank you. Yeah, I've stayed here mostly. I'm just going to be real honest. I've stayed here 100% for the money. No, just kidding. All right. I wonder how much his post-millennial views influence his radical theology. Not much, because they're not real. When all these guys have changed, like again, like it's Joel Webbon, it's Dale Partridge, it's like a lot of these guys who are adjacent to Moscow, they're not genuine about their theology. Like, yeah, they'll go into a camera and they'll like explain their view or whatever. And like, they'll read up on Wikipedia or gotquestions.org, what it is. But like it's not real. They've shifted so much. It can't be real. Like, how can you go from like literally in a year being like, I'm going to go from 1689 to Moscow to then Moscow is the enemy in a year. Like, and then be taken seriously for theology? Like, what? I don't care, like, about what someone who just started believing something thinks about that thing. I want to listen to the expert. I want to listen to the person who's believed that thing for 30 years. And is like, this is what I've held to. It doesn't mean you can't change your mind, but don't try to platform yourself off of something that you just changed to. You're the new guy on the block. You got to do your time, like you got to like actually like work a little bit, figure your stuff out, and then maybe you can talk and be listened to, Like Joe Rigney going from a Baptist seminary to Moscow, like being president and affirming, credo baptism to them being Paedo Baptists. Like, why do people take his theology seriously? If he goes from that in a summer, like not even a year, 3 months, and he gets to go and teach that and then teach that, why does anyone care what his opinion is? I just don't, like, that will always be something that I just never understand. Like, all right, I've held my view of Calvinism since 2010. All right, I feel like I could talk about that now. Like the first couple years, probably not so much. But I feel like now I've wrestled with things, I've lived through it. I can kind of just be like, this is what I believe, and I've held on to. I just don't understand coming into a system and being like, this system is mine now, and it's my platform. I just don't get it. You want to talk about like people and culture being like so possessive about things and selfish and bratty and catty about all this stuff, and you're just like, I am now the proponent of patriarchy because I've been into patriarchy for 5 minutes. What? Why do these people care? I'll never understand that, but that's just me, I guess. Dean, my husband said that the Grimkey podcast had Joe Rigney on as well. Did you see that? No, I have had growing concern about Grimkey. I don't understand how they're about the things that they're about lately. Tony Merida, solid. I don't know him, but I've listened to sermons and I've read his books, and to me, he's been so solid. And he started Grimkey. There was some kind of change. He's not there now. Maybe that's the reason. But Doug Logan is now like the main guy there at Grimkey. And On the Block by Doug Logan is such an underrated pastoral book that everyone should read. It's a great book, but I have no idea what they're about now, because it seems like there's a few people there that are steering the ship toward Right Response Ministries, like toward Moscow. And to me, that doesn't make any sense. This was started as like an Acts 29 thing, and now it's going that route. And like, you listen to them talk about things, like they talked about women. And of course, they turn off the comments on their YouTube channel because, that's bravery, that's courage, that's masculinity. But like, then they're just like, women are bad and they shouldn't go to seminary. And it's just like, I just don't get it. I don't know what they are anymore. Maybe I should do a deep dive into that and do an episode, because I was just so disheartened by that. Because at the beginning, I thought it was pretty solid. And, knowing some of the guys that started it, I was like, okay. And then to think that Doug Logan was in charge of it, I was like, oh, it's going to be good. His books are great. Like, but I guess I don't know him. And I've only listened to a few of his sermons. But I'm very concerned about where Grimkey is going. So it doesn't surprise me to hear that he was on that podcast. I'll check it out, and maybe we'll talk about it, because maybe it'll give me more insight into what Grimkey's about, because there's something changing over there, and it's concerning me. Yeah. But again, I'm just a guy on the internet. So they accuse others of grifting, but it's definitional to their actions. Agreed. If Doug Wilson started speaking in tongues, Dale Partridge would be doing it shortly after. Guys, Dale Partridge was speaking in tongues. That's what people don't know. Like, he was all about like house churches and like in a very like charismatic world. The guy was speaking in tongues. All right, that's the background. And you're like, oh, that must have been so long ago. 5 years ago. Think about all the changes that you've seen Dale Partridge make over the years. That's where he started. You know what? Joel Webbon was the exact same way. They were very charismatic. They were in that world. But nope. No, now they're known for all these things. They're the conservatives, and they're, cessationists and blah, 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 blah. Let's go down. I thought Doug Wilson's church was considered a cult, and I heard this years ago. Is he not? Oh, he is. Yep. A lot of people don't think so, but he is. Thanks, Dean. Went to Tony's church while in seminary, and I'm glad to hear he's not a part of it anymore. I agree with you having red flags about it. Yeah, I don't like I don't know for sure, but I seem to remember that Tony left and like moved on to other stuff, and that like I know Doug Logan is in charge now, but I don't know why. And I don't know why the stuff, but I've seen like in that episode, Doug Logan's sitting there as these young guys, you know, with their peach fuzz beards, talking about how women shouldn't go to seminary and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And like a lot of just like hyper complementarian stuff, like on the verge of patriarchy, if it's not. And like, I'm just seeing Doug Logan sit there. It's not the Doug Logan I remember, but I don't know. Maybe I was wrong. I think Dean did his stream discussing some of these things and drawing distinctions between the church and society. That was helpful. What was that in reference to? Perhaps one day that topic can be done into more depth, but for now, just a popcorn question. What was the question? Then that's the basis to my question about Webbon. I'm not seeing the question, Nathan. Retype the question if you could into the chat at the bottom so I can see it. I missed that. What's Hugo? What's up, dude? You know, just hanging out. You know, I like sitting in a warm room, and I just dig it. I kind of even like the way it looks on camera here. Maybe we'll do it more often. Maybe we'll hang out up here. Britt and I have been having a conversation. Oh, okay. So that question wasn't for me. All right. All right. So that's the stream today, as we still have 147 people watching and 64 likes, and everyone else hates me. They do it. That's okay. You can think what you want as long as you come back, I guess. But tune in next week where Dean gets rid of all of his theology and is now patriarchy boy. That's a thing. It might happen. Is Dale in the same vein as Joel? 100%. I would say like he's probably worse. Like he's about the worst you could think of in that world, to be honest. Just complete liar. What does your electricity bill look like when it's that cold? Not great. No, but we have natural gas, and like it's not too bad. You know, everyone prepares for it. Like the winter is going to be much worse than the summer. So it's not as bad as you might think, but it's still a hefty price. But you know, what else are you gonna do? Like it's negative 40 last week. It was negative 40. That's not the wind chill. It was negative 40. My washer froze. It literally froze downstairs because it's against the exterior wall of the house in the basement that isn't insulated super great. And so my washer froze. I had to take it apart and break ice chunks out of it. I was pouring boiling water into the pump. What is it? The pump motor, whatever. And I was pouring boiling water into that while I had a hairdryer going on it to break up ice inside my washing machine. So that's how it is. That's how it is in the winter. Right? There's things you got to do. You got to plug in your cars. You every summer you try to think about, should I build a garage? And then life takes you away from it. And every winter you regret it. So it's just that. There's a lot of things. Dale's so much worse. Agreed. Got to monetize the channel first, Dean. Make me almost went full Napoleon Dynamite. With that free Canadian healthcare, might as well save the money and freeze for a free hospital stay. Oh, maybe. Whoa, that is icy, ice cold. Yep, it's pretty bad. yeah. He has changed a lot. Then you got some Googling to do. Dean, come to Quebec. It's nicer and way more fun. We'll teach you French. I have been to Quebec, and it's not fun. he lied. No, actually, Montreal is a really cool city, and I had a blast there. But like those streets, man. As a guy from Seattle, I feel like I can say this with credibility. Montreal is the worst city to drive in. I've been to some big cities. I haven't been in New York City, so maybe that's different. But Montreal is the worst city to drive in. All of the street names look the exact same, and you have no time to turn. No time to turn. And like you're on a street and you're like, this ain't a highway. And then you realize everyone going past you, and you're like, no, I guess it is a highway. Even though it just looks like a normal street. This is a highway because everyone is going 100 miles an hour. All right, I'm so sorry. 140 kilometers an hour. Like they're just blasting past you. And it's just like, this is supposed to be a side street. It's the worst. I know, like, it was fun. I found a really cool comic book shop in the middle of a building. I've never seen that before. Where it's just like a literal skyscraper. And you go up an elevator, and it's just like there's like a room that is, I guess, a store, and it's a comic book shop. And I got in Infinity Gauntlet stuff there. I got I got my Greg Capullo autographed Batman #1 there. Yeah, and I got a first print of Flash #1 from the New 52. So, yeah. It's the Wild West. Yeah, it is. It's crazy. It's scary. Like, again, I'm pretty comfortable driving around big cities. I've driven, 15 passenger vans all over Minneapolis. Okay. Like, I'm pretty comfortable. But it's like, that's something else. When you're next in Montreal, try Millennium Comic Books, best store in town. Is that the one? Like the one that I went to inside of some tower was pretty awesome. It was pretty big. Like it looked like it was just one room, but it was very wide and had some crazy cool stuff. I don't remember the name of it though. But yeah. All right, that's enough for that. 133 people still watching. You guys are nuts. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.